Cheyenne trudged through the snow for quite a while. Breathing was difficult due to the icy air, but she had to bring the little puppy home and had no time to lose. Hopefully I'm really on the right track. She looked down so as not to get snow in her face. She couldn't see far through the storm anyway. She just had to go straight ahead. Sometime later she heard something familiar. Cheyenne! Cheyenne, where are you, dear? Grandmother! Grandfather! She looked up and saw a chroma glow in the distance. That would mean that she would have gone in the right direction. Here I am! She shouted with all her strength, hoping that it would be enough for them to hear her. She knew she could hear far better than her grandparents and worried that she could hear her grandparents, but not the other way around. In fact, they didn't seem to hear it, so Cheyenne trudged towards the glow. Cheyenne, there you are! We were so worried. What kind of stuff are you doing, dear? Cheyenne's grandmother came up to her and hugged her. What have you got there? Grandmother, we don't have time. We have to go home quickly, otherwise the little puppy will die. With a questioning look, the old lady looked at the girl, but did not ask any further, and so they made their way home. Xava's mother was also there. Well, you have a lot to report, young lady. Xava was in tears with worry for you. He did what? Cheyenne was amused but also touched that her best friend cared so much about her. Together they trudged through the snow and headed towards the Undercity. Xava stood at the window, cuddled up in 2 blankets, and waited impatiently for the arrival of his best friend and that of the adults. They take so long. Hopefully they find her, and hopefully nothing happened to her. Then he saw the chroma glow outside became brighter, and was sure that it had to come from the chroma lanterns of the adults. Cheyenne! Xava ran to the door and opened it. The freezing wind blew in his face and he shuddered, but he did not care. He wanted his friend to be safe. In fact, a group of people approached him and he recognized the grandparents, his mother and Cheyenne as they got closer. He ran up to the girl and hugged her. Cheyenne, I was so worried. Never do that again, okay? Yes, I'm sorry, it's okay. Please let me pass. His best friend broke free from the embrace and ran into the house. Xava stood there in confusion and then hurried after her. The adults also went into the house and locked the door from the cold. Cheyenne knelt by the fireplace and pulled out the little bundle of her coat. She put it in front of the fireplace and took off her coat to wrap the little puppy even warmer. What is that? Xava came closer, confused but curious, and looked at the ball of fur. A wolf? What? Cheyenne's grandfather came closer, and soon everyone had gathered around the fireplace, staring at the little pile of misery. Cheyenne began to tell how she had found the little one, and what distress he was in, and that she wanted to nurse him up. Yes, and I just couldn't let it die there. Can we please keep it until it's fit again to survive on its own? The grandparents looked at each other and agreed. Well, as long as it's so small, it's unlikely to eat us. All right, dear. We'll keep it for now and nurse it up again. Cheyenne rejoiced and stroked the little bundle. Cheyenne? She flinched at her grandfather's voice. Yes, grandfather? Cheyenne slowly turned to her grandfather, and Xava had to pull himself together not to laugh out loud. I think it's great that you want to help an animal. But you've put Xava in enormous danger, and yourself as well. Did you really think there would be no moral lecture now? The girl sighed and now was allowed to listen to her grandfather's lecture under the grin of her best friend, how dangerous her ill-considered action was and what could have happened. While her grandfather scolded her, her grandmother prepared dinner. It was something very special. A piece of beef for everyone, with potatoes and sauce. Some of these things had been bought by the grandmother from the market with the little money they had left. Xava sat on the sofa, leaning against his mother and cuddled up in his warm blankets. At a certain point, everyone started laughing and having fun. They were all just happy that the little adventure had turned out well. And Cheyenne took her grandfather seriously, but after a while she always found his moralizing funny, and the old man couldn't be too strict with her. The five always spent Holy Night together, and Xaver and his mother were invited this time, but it would be spent at Xaver's home next year. They always took turns. Last year they were all invited to Rosie's. This year, however, the old lady and her husband had a visit from their children and wanted to spend a quiet family celebration. At Holy Night the family is honored, the end of the year and the little things that meant a lot to the people of the Undercity. You celebrate your daily bread, which you were allowed to have this year, the harvest you had, the beautiful events you were allowed to experience, and that you were allowed to be at the side of your loved ones. As a special tradition, one goes through the house and consecrates everything with incense to bless it and obtain the protection of the gods. That's why it's called Holy Night. Also this year Cheyenne and her grandparents followed this tradition, and before they had dinner they dedicated the entire house and the barn to get the blessing of the gods. Whether it was really true, nobody knew. But the belief moves mountains, said her grandmother always. After they had dinner, the girl looked after the little puppy. She had left him a piece of meat and put it in front of his nose along with a bowl of water. The little one sniffed and opened his eyes. Then very carefully and slowly grabbed the piece of meat and devoured it hungry. Well, there you go. I think you're feeling a little better, but you seem really starved. I don't want to know how long you've been stuck there. Cheyenne stroked the now dry fur of the little one's head, who had put his head back on the ground and closed his eyes again. The girl snuggled up to Xaver on the sofa and he pulled her under his blanket. Come here. Cheyenne smiled with her eyes closed and was happy. An evening with her loved ones and a gift for Holy Night which you could not pay. Even though there were no other gifts this year, she was absolutely satisfied. After all, she was allowed to save a small little wolf puppy and play with Xaver for a whole day. She was allowed to have a lot of fun and a delicious dinner on top of that. Her grandmother brought the children homemade cookies and hot cocoa. The adults sat at the table and played a board game while Cheyenne sat cuddled up to Xaver on the sofa. I still need a name for the little one. How do you even know it's male? Did you check or what? Xaver blushed slightly and avoided her gaze. No, but I feel it, okay? He just seems so masculine, just like you. The girl grinned and started laughing when she saw that Xaver was really red in the face. You're red as a tomato. Stop it, you not. The boy twitched his eyebrows and then looked at her with just one eye. So, name? His friend thought for a moment and then looked at the Holy Night tree. I've got it. I call the little one Adokas. Huh? Adokas? How do you come up with that now? Do you remember the book with the old yin-yang language that we looked through together? The word adorable means lovely, sweet, and the word kase means wind. So, Adokas, lovely wind, because I like the incense so much and that's also a lovely wind. And above all, the whole house smells just like it, so even the little one. Xaver shook his head. You and your ideas. Any other person would call their pet Luna or Ruby or Teddy, and you come here with your yin-yang language, and these are probably the only words you've remembered from the whole book. So you're just inventing something, because it's with lovely wind. Am I right? Psst! It's really not invented. I like it. Adokas. I think that's a nice name. Xaver put his hand on her head. Yes, it's a nice name. Then the two snuggled up to each other again and fell asleep after a while. The fire crackled while the storm raged outside, but the two friends were happy that the adventure has ended well, and they could even help a little soul. So Holy Night Eve passed, and the silence of the night broke in while the Undercity went to sleep.